like, you paid to see me, so now I tell you what to do. And then it's just like, okay. It's like weird flex, but all right.
I'd be like real weird about it. I'd be like, guys, would you mind? Like, I don't want to trouble you, but would you mind like popping your mask on for?
I feel like the it's a very interesting kind of dynamic to do that, because imagine going to like, when the Ennis sisters do like their Christmas concert and everyone's like, oh, it's great, it's a wonderful time of year, and then Maureen or Teresa or Karen gets on and be like, I know you guys are all here to see us, but do you mind just putting on your mask? And they're like, oh, the ball's on them to think we're going to put on our masks. And
well,
it's like, then you get Cecilia, like the mother in the audience, like, you do what my daughters tell you, and you're like, all right. Welcome to Tobin Tonight, the podcast that the ratings are going through the roof. No, I mean, they're going the other way. They're going down the toilet. No.
Listen, it's like everything is like that right now. Everybody is trying to figure out this new live stream thing, so it's all good.
Yeah. I like when we have Axe on, and it's like they don't get the humor right away, and they're like, "Our ratings going down the toilet?" I'm like, I don't know. It's like, it's COVID. It's like, as long as someone's listening, like, if someone's upstairs, like, Brian, I'm tuning in. I'm like, thanks, Mom.
Perfect. That's like me too.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, to really start things off. I know that you just did a show with Rachel and Mallory. How did that go?
That show was amazing. So that had been the first time that I had performed live in, I know it's a year and a half, and it could have been 2 years, to be quite honest with you, because I had been, before everything shut down with the pandemic, I had been traveling and writing, and a bunch of shows that I had lined up for a couple of months in advance obviously got canceled because of the pandemic. So it was really, really cool. Carla Pilgrim was there as well. And I'm really anxious. I'm an extremely anxious person, if you didn't know that already. And I struggled with being in front of an audience. I didn't know how to perform anymore. I was scared I was going to just flop, but it ended up being a wicked experience. And the girls are all deadly. They're so great.
Yeah, I like that. That's a very Newfoundland term. There's going to be people like, what does she mean by deadly? Are they dead? Like, what happened? It's like, no, it means like they were great. It was awesome.
That's right. I need like subtitles in the bottom.
Oh no, like that's the worst thing you could do. We've actually, so it's full disclosure, we actually tried to put up an episode with subtitles, and my mom was listening to it, and she's like, that is not even what you said. And the subtitle is saying something completely different. And I was like, great, no subtitles. If someone wants to know
subtitles,
it's
like,
yeah, it's like I have to go into like whoever creates the subtitles, like, listen, I think you got the English language part down, but now you have to go to Newfoundland and then put in Newfoundland subtitles, so you get that part down. Yeah, and then they come to Newfoundland, they're like, they don't pay me enough for this. I'm like, fair enough.
My manager came down from Toronto last March, right before the pandemic, and a lot of times he'd be sitting at the table and he'd be like, sure. Yeah. Had no idea what people were saying at all.
Yeah, it's my favorite one.
He'd whisper to me. He'd go, "What did they just say?" Like, oh,
yeah. Explain to me. My favorite ones that I do I came home from Newfoundland because of the COVID, but I'm usually up away in Ottawa. And when you're playing soccer or ball hockey with your buddies, I just assumed that it was a normal thing. So we got girls on our team, and I'll be saying like, boys, come back and play defense. And then you get one that turns around like, there's girls on this team too. I'm like, it's collective. It's everybody, as in the end of everybody, the BY part. Yeah, use that. Or if you're in soccer and someone is lost on the field and you're like, stay where you're at till I come where you're to. They're like, I don't know what you're saying, but I'm just going to stay here. And I'm like, exactly.
Perfect.
You got it. But no, yeah, I thought it was really interesting because we've had Rachel and Mallory on for like the whole ECMA special.
I watched it, tuned in.
Yeah. Oh, nice. I'm sure like you were more entertained by the guests than the host. The host was always like, I don't know why you're all here.
No, of course not. You were very entertaining.
Did you like the Ian Foster joke where Ian said about being, what was it? I think it was like Dean Fooster.
I didn't catch that. I only caught the tail end. I think it was like the last maybe 20 minutes or so.
That's fair. Like, he was mentioning a story about I asked everyone to give you basically like, I think it was like an embarrassment moment or like a learning thing, and he was explaining how one time he had met Bryan Adams, and he yelled at Bryan Adams because Bryan was spelling his name Dean. And then he mentioned another time that he got an award, and instead of saying Ian Foster, it said Fooster. So I was like, man, that's your stage name right there, Dean Fooster.
I think that's a great idea. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, everyone needs an alternative stage name. I mean, Garth Brooks, even when he wanted to not do country, he was like, I'm doing a total different alias. I'm like,
what was that again?
I don't know. I don't want to know.
What's that name? I gotta make a note to Google that.
Yeah. I feel like Garth Brooks is like, great, this guy in Newfoundland is bringing up about my past.
He loves it.
But yeah, like I feel like doing that show, and I think you said it was about a year or 2 years since you were performing. Like, did you have jitters? Were you nervous? Were you, again, they're people that you know, so I guess it's a little bit more comforting. But I feel like any time, whether it's like 20 of your buddies on stage or just you alone, after a long kind of layoff, you got to be like, okay, do I have this? Am I comfortable? What are we doing?
I mean, for me, it wasn't so much about being on stage with those people, because we've been doing live shows over Facebook and Instagram now for over a year. For me, it was more so, I was really anxious when the pandemic started. I shut down for about 2 or 3 months, and I couldn't write, I couldn't perform. I was just, watching TV, scared to death all day long. So for me, being in front of an audience for the first time in so long, I was really fixated on, oh my God, there's literally people in the audience right now. Are they too close to me? Am I going to get all panicky? And like, there was all these weird thoughts that were going through my head beforehand. And I guess it took me about a song or two. No, definitely the first song to kind of like ease my nerves. But it was very humbling. Because I was back to like that first gig I ever played, is what it felt like. And I mean, the audience was incredible. They were understanding, and my humor is always self-deprecating, so that was easy for me that day. But it was cool. It was a good experience. But it was weird, though. I have to say, so weird.
I feel like before you come on stage, if you wanted to make it the big dramatic moment where it's like, okay. It's like who's coming on the stage next. It's like, okay, so what she wants you to do is everyone take out your masks, put on your gloves, get your whole suit on. They're like, really? Oh, she owns the room. That's what I'd love to do that in a comedy sketch.
I came in I was the only one on the stage. I walked out with my mask on, and I had my hand sanitizer in one hand and my water in the other hand. And I came out and I sprayed my microphone and sprayed the person, like Mallory's microphone. And it was very weird. So weird. I felt like such a weirdo, but it was okay. Everybody understands my weirdness. It's not like, I wouldn't say I would be taking over a room but if I could get everyone to wear their masks, I would have been like, yeah, guys, you want to pop them on for me?
Yeah, I
would have if I could have.
It's like you paid to see me, so now I tell you what to do. And then it's just like, okay. It's like weird flex, but all right. I'd
be like real weird about it. I'd be like, guys, would you mind? Like, I don't want to trouble you, but would you mind like popping your mask on for? I feel like
the it's a very interesting kind of dynamic to do that, because imagine going to like, when the Ennis sisters do like their Christmas concert and everyone's like, oh, it's great, it's a wonderful time of year, and then Maureen or Teresa or Karen gets on and be like, I know you guys are all here to see us, but do you mind just putting on your mask? And they're like, oh, the ball's on them. I think we're going to put on our masks. And then you get Cecilia, like the mother in the audience, like, you do what my daughters tell you, and you're like, all right.
I think like, the way that shows are framed now, I think a lot of people are more open to, the safety, and they want to be safe too. So even, last year, I think Christmas time, I did a Christmas show from Canadian Navy. So did the Ennis sisters and a slew of other artists. And it was weird because there was no audience. So, you're playing to basically an empty room minus the crew. So strange. It's so strange. But then at the flip side of that, you finally get in front of an audience, and it's still so strange because, oh my God, we're in front of an audience again. And it's trying to figure out the dichotomy of how to make things work and how to make sure the audience is comfortable and that we're comfortable. And well, I'll tell you. But it was a really good show, and I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, like I feel like that's a really good point to bring up, because it's not only with music, it's like, with comedy, with late night TV shows. Like I noticed when the pandemic first started, late night shows, and I guess comedians were almost like, yeah, we don't need an audience, we'll just try this. And then it's like you notice crickets. It's like a joke, that joke is supposed to nail it, or like that's supposed to be a key moment in that show, and it's nothing. And then they're like, all right, I guess we undervalued the audience. And then now they're like, okay, well, let's do the shows from home like everyone else is doing. Because like I love watching Conan. I liked watching like I think it's like Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. And at the first of it, I was like, okay, they're going to show some replays or past episodes. That's great. And then they were doing it live with no audience. I was like, it's just not the same. And then when I did it from home, I'm like, okay, I'm getting it. Like you're kind of relating it to us all being from home. And it was a little bit more easy going, but I'm sure they're just as happy as anyone else too, where it's like, you're telling me I can do jokes and people will laugh again. Oh my God, I don't know how am I going to respond to people laughing at me?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, and a lot of my, for me, a lot of my live stage presence or my stage performance is joking around and interacting with the audience. So over the last year and a half, I had to figure out, well, how do I do a show now when I have no audience to interact with? And we found ourselves, relying on comments on the Facebook feeds or whatever. And that's definitely not the same. So we got used to that. And then now I was, in front of an audience again. And it took me, I don't know, it took me a while just to kind of wrap my head around, being able to hear people applaud. I think this is so dramatic, and I am the most dramatic person you'll ever meet. But when, after the first song and after the first introductions, everybody started to clap for us, I think I got tears in my eyes because it had been so long. How dramatic can I be? It had been so long since I had heard people clapping that it was almost like a really overwhelming few seconds. And it was crazy. It was really cool to kind of be put back in that setting again. It was wild, actually.
That's like when they're all clapping and then you like shove Rachel and Mallory, and then on the way you're like, thank you, it's all for me. And then they're just like, relax. And you're just like, oh, I just wanted it so bad. But I do think it's kind of a funny aspect to it, where you were mentioning about doing the Instagram live. And, when you said a part of your kind of act or performance is engaging with the audience, I would have loved to see, and I'm sure there's probably ones out there where people pretend that the audience is still there, where you're like, just say if your thing is to high five a stage manager, or like, take a swig of water from somebody that's standing there, and you're just like, your first ever video, it's like, and they're like, who are they high fiving? Oh, they're pretending that people are there. Or now vice versa, where when people are like cheering you on, you're like looking at your phone and be like, I don't see any of you following or commenting on my performance right now. And it's like, because we're here. It's like, I'm not used to that. Can you please like the video?
Yeah, can you please send me some comments? It's true. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, it's all like, I feel like it's like vice versa. You first get used to the pandemic. Now you're getting used to like the aftermath, or like kind of post-pandemic, hopefully soon enough. But it's like, I just got used to this. Now we got to get unused to it. It's like, oh, I'm okay, but it's just going to take some time.
You got to rewire things again. So and then you don't want to jump the gun because the uncertainty of the world. So it's weird.
Yeah, and I get that, where there's just starting to open things up a little bit more. I'm like, all you need now is just one little outbreak, and then people are like, all right, back to stage one. But I feel like it's a little, it's like a gradual thing, where if you looked at it from year one to where we're at now, it's like when we first got it, it was like, all right, like, what are we doing? Can we do this? Can we do that? We're kind of a little bit experienced to the point where it's like, have you been vaccinated? Have you got your second vaccination? Okay, good. That's a little bit more promising than, hey, we're just out there willy-nilly. But it's so fascinating. And I don't know like how I'll say Instagram savvy, because I'm not that great at Instagram, but it's like when you start scrolling through things and you'll see people comment or have pictures where it's like, how did we do this in a world before the pandemic? Like you would see people at concerts, neck and neck or face to face. And then people now are like, how did we do that? Like, how is that a thing? I'm like, because we never really thought about it the way we do now.
I know. And it's funny because in the United States, everything is like business as usual. They've got, they've got festivals going on, and there's thousands and thousands of people at these festivals, and the same thing with the hockey games and stuff. And to me, I look at the shows online or on TV, and my God, I can't even imagine myself going to a concert right now where I was shoulder to shoulder and, front to back with a crowd of strangers. Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. It's going to be hard for me. I guess that's the neurosis I developed over the last year and a half, but it's going to be hard for me to get back into the swing of things like they were before. And, we had a conversation. Myself and my parents got our second vaccination yesterday, which is deadly. And we had a conversation, coming up in the car about masks. Like, are we going to be able to go to maybe in a year's time, we won't need to wear masks or it won't be mandatory, but are we going to be able to go to a store now without wearing our mask? I don't think I can. I think that mask is now part of me forever because I'm terrified. I'm terrified.
It's like, because I think of it as the mindset of once you get used to it, it just becomes a part of you too. But it's like, it's when you mentioned about like concerts and going to them and, shoulder on shoulder with someone, that to me is kind of like, okay, I never really thought about it much until the pandemic. And then now after pandemic, I feel like I still want to play sports. Like I want to play ball, hockey, and soccer. And I know you're going to rub up against people in that, but it never really occurred to me like, okay, like that's how sometimes you would get a cold or a flu by doing that. And you're like, okay, so I got the cold and the flu or whatever, like big deal. But in my mind now, it's like, even when you go to work and work will be like, I think there was one earlier when COVID started where they sent out a work email to us to like, someone close to you may have had COVID. And I was just like, how close? I talked to everybody. Like, what's going on here? And now it's almost like, I'm like, okay, that was my little like almost death experience. So it feels like now when someone's coming up to me out in the open, I'm like, hold on, show me shot 1, show me shot 2, show me that you had no symptoms. And they'd be like, what are you doing? I'm just like, I'm trying to make sure that we're all clear. Now,
have you been
who are the
10
people that you contacted me the last couple of days? So like, I'm not getting into this. I just don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm like, oh my God, dodge the bullet.
It's true. It's so weird. It's hard to think of how we're going to navigate in the world when it gets back to some form of normalcy, but I can't go down that road right now. I'm just trying to survive today,
Now, I noticed on Instagram, which I think is really interesting because this is how we end up getting a lot of acts on this podcast. And it's weird because I think if we did this podcast in like the 90s to early 2000s, you wouldn't do this at all. But with Instagram, they have sponsorships. You see videos and you're like, oh, I like that song. And when I came across Monsters, and it's kind of, I guess, like, I don't know if you ever watched like How I Met Your Mother, where it's like Barney gives the whole backhanded compliment. So I feel like this is going to be like a backhanded compliment. But it's like, I look at the video, I like the illustrations. I'm like, man, like, don't even bother putting out a music video. This is the music video itself. Like, I don't even want to hear. It's like, hey guys, I'm actually going to release a music video. I'm like, no, it's done. There it is. But I like how, if you don't know, just say that if you're from Newfoundland or whatever, like it doesn't sound Newfoundland. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. We have great artists here, but to someone that's maybe in Calgary or in the States and they come across this, they'd be like, all right, interesting, I'll listen. Because sometimes all it takes is you to realize that an act is from so-and-so and you're like, all right, that's marginalized. Like, if I found out tomorrow, which is funny because we've had a band on called the Trebles, and I was like, great. But I thought they were originally from like the US until I did research, and it didn't really bum me out so much. I was more excited, but I know there will be people like, oh wait, they're a Canadian band. Oh, Canadian band. It's like, no, great Canadian band. So how do you feel when people come across that? Because I know Monsters was the latest one that I've seen, but how has that feedback been for that video and that song?
So I think, it's been amazing. That one's probably been, I've got messages from all over Canada, all over the world, really, about people thinking, that song was written for them. So everybody has gone through some sort of a situation where they've been the monster in somebody's story. So it's cool. Like, and again, I've got messages from Australia, Germany, all over the States. Yeah, it's been crazy. Like, so it's good. It's good to know that my music is resonating all over the place. But I will also say that I think that's the new normal with all the musicians, in Newfoundland and Canada. There's this new level of where you need to be, and you can now reach that level just from your home computer. with all the crazy programs that, that are available. And, there's songwriting, co-writing going on over, I could co-write with somebody in Nashville tomorrow just from my home, which is cool. So that's kind of been, I wanted to have that kind of like a big production, that big kind of sound on all the records and all the songs that I've written. So I'm glad to hear that you agree and that it sounds like it could be otherworldly. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, because it's like, because sometimes when you come across these musics, and I like it in the term of, like you said, you can do it from home. Like I feel like it's a good example, and hopefully if she does listen to these episodes, she doesn't take it the wrong way, but it's like the invention of like TikTok. Like I'm not big on TikTok, but like I get where it's trendy. I get how it comes. Like I look at it and I think Robin Ottolini for F-150, TikTok helped it. Like obviously she has all the talent in the world, but it's like that became trendy on TikTok. Now, if you tried that same artist in like the 2000s and you don't have these apps, like you might get famous or you might get your talent, like you might get noticed, but it's going to be really, really hard.
See, so the problem with that whole thing is that everybody in the world right now has an attention span of about maybe 20 seconds. So
what's
true.
That?
So I know. Were you saying something? What? But it's true, like about 20 seconds. And that's why TikTok is such a valuable, I haven't mastered it, but it's such a valuable tool. And a lot of big names have come from TikTok. And it's just because they show the hook of their song, 30 seconds or 15 seconds. And then people are going in and digging in to see who they are. I'm old. I'm really old. I'm too old for TikTok, to be honest with you. And trying to figure it out is like trying to learn how to walk again, So it makes our job a little bit harder because we've got to be more, kind of in your face in a different type of way. And for me, it's like that cool video. I thought the idea was really sweet. I thought that little monster was adorable. So it definitely caught people's attention. And the funny part of that song is it was the first song that I'd ever written and recorded with Rob Wells and Shoba in Toronto. And I recorded that whole vocal in a little tiny closet in the bottom of his house, in the bottom of his house, in the basement of his house. It was a little tiny, like maybe the size of a coat closet in your front porch. And the sound that he got out of that was crazy. And it was like a $200 or $300 microphone. So that's the other thing. Like you can create these big, huge songs for, basically in the terms of like what you have to pay for gear, nothing. $200-$300 is not that much when you think about productions that are, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. So it's pretty cool.
I like that your answer. It's like putting you in the bottom of the house. It's like, oh, you mean your basement? No. You're going further down than that. It's like, you got it further down in your basement. It's like, it's like under the basement, under the house completely. You're like, I don't understand. I thought we were writing a song here today. We are. You just need to record your vocals.
Down in the bottom of the house.
I think it's interesting that you said that because, like, of course, it's nice to have like all the equipment. But you're right. Like, as long as you have a really good mic, like, it's funny because I think it was like Rosemary Lawton had posted recently about getting a new mic. And I was like, man, I remember that. Like, I remember when I got this mic and I was like, oh, this is so great. And I remember when I was first doing this podcast, I used to have to call like Carleton University or Algonquin College and be like, do you have like time so I can do these interviews? And like, if it's a big name from the States or whatever, and it's like, Brian, you can't come in at 5. I'm like, can you tell that to my guest, because that's not going to fly for them. And I need this studio. And now I'm literally like at home with a mic and I can do it whenever, regardless if you have technical issues, but like at the same time, it's like, oh, I like that I can just kind of go upstairs, get something to eat and then do an interview or whatever. Where when I was at Carleton, it was like, man, I have to travel an hour and a half for an hour interview and an hour and a half back. So to go off what you were saying, it's nice to be able to have all the equipment and produce great quality, right? So,
and well, the other side of the coin is that you need to know how to use the gear. So,
there you go.
Like in a musical standpoint, I have no idea how to record much. Like I can do a demo vocal or whatever, but that's about it. So, to the people who are home, just hustling and able to get stuff out there that's A+ quality, it's pretty cool. And that happens here in Newfoundland all the time. Like it'll blow your mind. Really, it's wild.
Yeah, it's funny because I look at it in the standpoint of when you do see, the Warner Music or, Sony Music, and then people are like, oh, I need to get signed by them. And it's like, yeah, that's still, beneficial. But you do see a lot of acts that, again, just put in the money on Instagram or YouTube or wherever. And as soon as someone comes across it, that's how you're getting your interest. And to go by what you're saying, 20 seconds, like I look at it and there's time I'll watch stuff on YouTube. And then when an ad comes up and it's like, you can't skip this ad. I'm like,
no, it's just like, I don't want to watch this video anymore.
Oh my God, can I skip this ad? And then there's other times, and it's very rare, but it's like you'll click on the music video you want to see, and the ad is that music video. And you're like, for some strange reason, rather than watch that whole ad, you're like, skip it. I want to watch it at my own time. I want to be able to control it.
That's right. No, I do the same thing. It's often like, more so on Facebook videos where I could be watching something and all of a sudden the commercial breaks in at like, I don't know, a minute or two in. I'm like, all right, shag this. Even though the commercial might be 5 seconds, I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And then I'll move on.
It's like a 20-second, like it's like Instagram for me. It's you scroll, and you come across things that you like. And it's beneficial it's really beneficial to the entertainment side of things, like your comedians, your music. Because if you get it and it hooks with you, you're going to stay. Like, I love to think, even though I'm dead wrong, that when sometimes I stumble across music on Instagram, I'm like, did you hear about this act? It's like you can become like a hipster where it's like, oh, you never heard of them? It's like, oh,
I knew about them.
What world are you living in? So, yeah, like I've stumbled across, I think it was like the girl's name is Griff from like the UK, because it was like Black Hole. There's a band from Canada that it's very timely they put it out because it was like the Friends reunion. And I think there's a song, it's like 1999, and they reference Friends in that. And I was like, oh, you guys are so good at marketing. It's like, who's your label? It's like, oh, you don't have a label. So it's just timely. And if they get you, they know they got you. And I think that's how it came across with your video, because it came across timeline. I was like, I think I'm like you said, it's a lot of visual. So it's like people like the video aspect. And when I seen the video, I was like, oh, I'm entertained. Why is this lady running? And I was like, oh, okay. And then I'm like, listen. And then after I'm like, you should be listening to the music. I'm like, oh man, as a podcaster, I'm like, man, I like the illustrations. I like the drawing. But then when I went back and I listened to the song, I was like, oh man, this is all dope. I think it reminded me of Monsters Inc. So I don't know if that's an insult to you or not.
I don't know either.
I was like, yeah, it was like the monster. It's like the colors, I guess, and the dynamic. I was like, man, this reminds me of Monsters Inc. But I love Monsters Inc. So I feel like take it as a compliment.
I'll take it as a compliment. It's all good.
But tell me, how did you get into music? Because I know we talked a little bit about the song Monsters, but take me way back to when you first said, oh, I can do this as a career, or I'm actually pretty good at this.
Well, my in-ear keeps falling out. I was a cover artist. I didn't start singing until I was 16, and I was in a school play. And in order to have the lead role, I had to sing this section a couple of times. So I was like, okay, shag it, I'll do it. And after the play, my music teacher, her name was Heather McDonald. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us. She wanted us to put myself and a couple of my classmates. She wanted us to put together a band for St. Patrick's Day. Where I'm from, we have this big auction every St. Patrick's Day at the school to raise money, and they wanted me to put a band together for that. So that was called Ocean Sky, and that was when I was introduced to George Street. So I started playing on George Street at 16, going on 17 years old. And we would have to get a waiver signed, and our parents would have to give us a letter. And we needed a chaperone. And between sets, we'd have to hide out somewhere where we weren't in the bar. So I've been in broom closets. I've been in laundry rooms, really some gross places, just so we could play in these bars, right? So I played downtown in George Street in cover bands then from 16 until about 33. And I was playing 5-6 nights a week. But I found at the last, the end of my cover band career, and I made great money at it. It was wonderful. And I went to school and did all those things you're supposed to do. And I found at the end of it with the gigs, I would be watching the televisions up that were hanging from the wall in the bars. I'd be watching the football game, or I'd get them to put Friends on or something so I could read the subtitles while I was performing. And I knew at that point that you're not really fulfilled anymore, Caroline. Like it's time to figure something out. And I shortly after, well, I was still doing the cover thing, but I was hired with Music NL here in St. John's, and we did the Music NL Awards. And it was at that point out in Bonavista that I met Rob Wells, who was a producer of all the songs that I've released over the last few years. And he invited me to come to Toronto, and it was at that moment I kind of flipped my vision of how my music career was going to look around. And I thought, well, okay, maybe I can do this on my own. Maybe I can be a singer-songwriter. And I left the cover scene behind, and I went on to Toronto, and I've lived up there for 8 or 10 months, and then the pandemic started. I had to come back, and it's all been pretty cool. And this is my main gig now. I'm a full-time professional musician, and I'm lucky. I make a living, and that's the rest is history. See what happens in the future.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of cool because like you mentioned about going from the cover band aspect to doing it solo, but like, do you find at times that, because when you mentioned, of course, doing the cover acts and next minute you're kind of, I guess, not that it's not interesting, but it's like, okay, I've done what I can with this. So when you were doing solo, and now I've got written down here, but it's like you had an ECMA Indigenous Artist of the Year, you had a Music NL Country Artist of the Year. Like, does that kind of give you kind of, I won't say hope, but kind of justify like, okay, yes, I've made the right career choice, or like it just puts something in your hat that says, okay, we're doing well. Like this isn't, I didn't bomb, I'm doing okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, for me, the main thing is that I'm able to do this for a living. So I'm able to make an honest living and pay my bills and do the things that I want to do in my life. So by being a musician. So that to me is a win. All the award nominations and the awards that I've won, it's icing on the cake. It's pretty cool, actually, to be nominated. I've been nominated for a lot of awards, and I've won 3. But it's really cool to be nominated and to win, of course, because you feel like you said, like, okay, I am doing the right thing. What I decided, the type of music I decided I was going to do is the right type of music. People are interested in what I have to say or what I have to sing about, and it just kind of keeps you going and keeps you motivated. And it's also really cool too to see my peers like Mallory Johnson, Justin Fancy. I mean, there's a million, Chris Ryan, there's a million of them here, and everybody is succeeding. And it's also really cool to see that. It's awesome that we're all each other's competition. There's no way around it. There's the country, it's only a small town, and we're all each other's competition. But at the same time, we're all in each other's bands. We're all rooting for one another. We do what we can to get, the other ahead. And it's pretty cool. I couldn't be happier doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. I love it because there's one quote that I think it's like Rachel's mom, Hilda, mentioned to Rachel. And I love just kind of teasing with her because just to watch her face go like, basically to match her hair color, where it's like, like don't like, don't burn out someone else's candle just to make yours shine brighter. And
That's
I was like, oh, I do it all the time. It's like, I don't care. And it's like just a joke at her. And then like just to watch her face go from like, oh, why did you go there? I'm like, you get what I'm going at. It's like, I'm just trying to rile you up. But I do like what you said, because yes, there is an aspect of you're from Newfoundland, like you're all trying to make it. And so there's got to be a sense of,
competition for sure.
Like there's competition and there's connections. Like, let's put it this way. If you don't have connections, you're not getting places. You got the right connections, you're going places. But I like the fact that you did say that it is competition in a sense. Now it's healthy. It's not like you're like, oh, you're performing the same night I am. I hope nothing happens to your car on the way there. So, but it's healthy. But I like that example that you mentioned. Of course, you're all in each other's bands and rooting for each other. But I have to ask, because I did mention this in the ECMA special, and I was kind of interested that they all either dodged it, and I was like, I'm not going to pressure you too much on it, but like, when you all are up for the same award, and just say one of you wins it 2 or 3 years in a row, is there a part of you that's like, oh, like, what do I have to do to kind of take that, like, not take their spotlight, but just like, how do I go to that next level so that I get that recognition as well?
See, I can't really answer that because I won the award that everybody wanted here in Newfoundland 2 years in a row. So I don't know. I felt, did I feel
your,
bad?
Your answer
No.
is basically just be me. No.
No, well, not really. But you know what? Me and Mallory are for the Country Artist of the Year for the ECMAs. I think it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And she ended up winning that award. And honestly, if I wasn't going to win the award, there is not one single person in the world I would rather win it than Mallory Johnson. I was so happy. We celebrated and we had the greatest night. And this year, Justin Fancy won the Music and Country Award. And I'm stoked for him. I think it's great. But, you know, there are all these contests that go on throughout the year, right? So I'm in the Sirius XM Top of the Country. I'm a semifinalist. There's stuff for Boots and Hearts, and then there's like a million things that go on. And so I got the Sirius XM gig. This year, Mallory's got the Boots and Hearts gig where she's competing to get like this really deadly showcase in Toronto at that big festival they do. And then Justin got a bunch of things too. But like, it's so funny. It's just human nature because when they get it, then I get a no, right? So I applied for the Boots and Hearts things, but I got a no. I got that generic, oh, you know, we love you, but we're sorry. And then
I get those all the time.
Oh, it's brutal. And then Justin's the same thing. So he got a bunch of stuff, and then I got the no's, and Mallory got the no's. So it's hard. It's hard to hear no all the time. And it's easy to focus on the that's again human nature. It's easy to focus on the negativity and the no's, and rather than celebrate that big yes, like I'm in the Sirius XM Top of the Country. I've been doing this for a year, and I could win $25,000 and a million things in Nashville. But I'm like, oh man, I got to know again today. So it's so funny how your mind works.
I think it's interesting. Like, I really think that's a really good point that you made, because it's like, you know, before doing this podcast, my background is media. So like applying for Rogers, Bell, Chorus, you name it. And it's like, I think it's like a quote from Friends where it's kind of misinterpreted, but it's like, you're going to go on like 100, you're going to apply for 100 jobs before you get a job. And it's supposed to be you get like before you find your dream job. But I was like, okay, so I've applied for like 200, 250.
Great.
where's my dream job? But it's interesting because you don't, when you get the yes, or when you get like, like, let's do this interview, blah, 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 you're like, okay, great. But the no always kind of outweighs that in a sense.
Yeah. It does. It really does. I mean, I got to know yesterday or the day before from this thing that I really like. It was a festival that I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I was so bummed about it because it was perfect and it would have been a great time. And me being a dummy, I reply to my manager. I just thought he forwarded it to me. I didn't think he included the festival's email address. And I was like, oh, another no to add to the pile. Thumbs up in the email. And then I looked at it and I went, oh my God. I just sent that to the entire roster from this particular festival. Yeah. I was like, oh God damn it. That's terrible. You know what I mean? Like I look like such a sour grape type. The worst. But anyway, everybody laughed and laughed. So it's all good. But man, it was just like, I went from so sad to like dread going, oh my God, I sent it to everybody.
I feel like there's just, To me, I've actually done that, but I haven't. Like, if you get one from Bell and Rogers, and it's been like your 50th one, or I've actually probably contacted like CBC's president, Bell's president, and like, there's a part of you that your friends are like, "What are you doing? Like, you're making it worse." But there's also a part of me that's like, "No, like, I want to know, like, why is it now the 50th one?" And I feel like there's a way of that to basically, maybe it's not. Maybe wording it better would be great, but at the same point, it's like you're just trying to show them, like, I'm not saying no and I'm happy you gave me a no. I'm showing you I'm passionate of being like,
learn.
Yeah, like why? Like, tell me how I can get to the next step. And telling, like, it's not like you're saying like fuck off. Like, tell me, like, why didn't you? You're just basically like, okay, so you gave me a no for the 3rd straight year for this job. So what exactly did I not do? What haven't I gone or need to get there? And some people are like, how dare you do that to a president? I'm like, no, how dare I show them that I was passionate enough to be like, this is not cool with me anymore. Like, tell me what I'm doing.
I agree with you 100%. I feel anytime that we apply, I say we, because I always use Caroline East as like the collective team of people. But when you know, you're applying for grants or you're applying for whatever things are to apply for, when you inevitably get that no, I'm always like, well, okay, cool. Can you please tell me what the jury said and what I need to work on, or what they think I need to work on? So it's like a moment of learning, but it's also like, it's frustrating because I don't know. I had this one gig one grant that was pretty substantial, and I lost the grant by 0.4 of 0.4 of a point. And it just came right down to like personal preference of, this one particular jury member. And that stuff is hard. That's a hard pill to swallow. But I'm like you, I'd rather know, like, tell me what I'm shagging up and I'll fix it, for next time. Cause I'm going to keep applying until I get it. And you might as well just tell me what I need to do so we can just get this out of the way, kind of deal. That's how I feel. As you do.
Now, I do want to give you like a bit of a kind of a compliment here, because it's like, for an industry like music, entertainment, even like podcasting, there has to be, and I think a lot of people deserve credit in that, and they probably don't get it outright because people are like, I'm not going to baby you with that. Like, why would I? But it's like getting a lot of no's. Like, you have to learn to take the no and either either accept it and do something, or like, how are you going to handle it? Like, I like in your case, you're kind of like, okay, how do I get better? And like, yes, you do get the yeses. So it's like, maybe at one point they were no's and now they're yeses. So you're like, okay, we're breaking down walls. We're getting there.
Yeah.
But
there's still so many no's though. There's so many. The no's still affect me. Like and I'm sure they do you as well. There's times when I'm just, man, I'll get a no. And I'm like, oh God, like what, why? There's no logical, and maybe there is a logical reason, but I don't see it. And it's just like, I get so hurt by them sometimes.
Oh yeah.
I just feel like I don't know. There's times I just like sit down and just be a big baby and cry for 5 or 10 minutes. And then you go, okay, got to move on. Got to try something else. Cause there's no point wasting my time with that. So the music industry.
Like when you were saying, like the wording of it is also like, if they worded it even better, I don't know if that would make a difference, but it's like, you were a valued member to our team. I'm like, I actually wrote one back, and I know it's automated. So it just comes back to you, but there's a sense of still getting the anger out, where it's like, how am I a valued member to your team when I applied 100 times for different roles and yet I haven't gotten one? But yes, I'm valued on your team. And it's like, this email became like, its outbox exchange didn't go through. I'm like, that's fine. I got what I wanted out.
Get it out though.
Nobody, but still.
I hear you. Totally get it. Totally get it.
But yeah, like to me, I think that's kind of, it's interesting to me when you mentioned about no's and how it can still be impactful, because there are a lot of people, I think that it's a really good point, because there's a lot of people that you see an overnight success, like, and you think it's overnight success, I should say, where like an artist comes out of nowhere. And like, for me, I'm a 90s kid. So growing up, I didn't really get to know how the Backstreet Boys became famous, or NSYNC. They were just on my TV. But then like, you get your Bruno Mars, your Halseys, Rihanna's, and you're like, man, you came out of nowhere. But then when you go into their backstory and you really dig, it's like, no, they didn't. Like, they were at small pubs too, and they were just got a break, and you're like, but 1 minute I didn't know you and now I know you. But it's like, go talk to them, they'll tell you.
It's true. It's so funny though, a lot of it now, like there's different, the world is different now with TikTok and Instagram. It's Instagram Reels, like it's crazy. There's people who, they're 14 and 15 years old and they've got a cool hook on their phone, and then they sing it like while they're hitting their hands on the table, and then all of a sudden they've gone viral, and then they've got a record deal, and you're like, what? Are you kidding? Are you kidding right now? I've been doing this for 30 years, and this kid, whatever. I'm not bitter. It's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. It's all fine.
I'm fine. It's fine.
I want to get into a little bit of, if you don't mind, the indigenous side of things, because I like when, and it could be a different standpoint for you, but by the time your episode is aired, we've had Carrie Enerson on, which is like a Canadian curler. And she had recently come out and said that she found out that she was indigenous, and she gets sponsored by, I think it's like from Winnipeg or Manitoba. So there's like an indigenous sponsorship she has, but she's learning more about that. Like, have you always known? Was this something that was recent?
No, I haven't always known. I think, this is always, I need to tread lightly with this, but because it's a very sensitive subject to a lot of people, and rightfully so. Back when my grandmother was younger, and she's no longer with us. She died at 93, and that was 5 years ago. So we're looking at like a very long time ago. In Newfoundland and Labrador, and especially where I'm from and where my father and my grandmother are from, it was kind of a secret if you had Indigenous relatives, or if that was a part of your culture, then it was always kept a secret. I'm not going to speak as to why my grandmother may or may not have kept it a secret, because I don't know. And she passed away without really even telling us anything about her side. To me specifically, I don't want to speak to the rest of my family, but for me, I never ever had a conversation with my grandmother about it. But my aunts on my father's side, they somehow figured out that we had roots with, the Mi'kmaq down in St. George's, and which is down it's in western in Corner Brook area. And they took, I feel like it was years, and went down through the family tree, and they found out a lot of information about our background, and that we were, there's a museum out there for the Indigenous culture in St. George's. And my grandfather was heavily involved in, my great grandfather, was heavily involved in the community there. And he was Indigenous, and I've had great aunts and great great aunts and great uncles, and you name it, who are very prevalent people in the St. George's area. So we went through the family tree and figured it all out. And that was about 10 years ago. So you can imagine my surprise when this little blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl figured out that I had roots in the Indigenous culture here in Newfoundland and Labrador. Because it just didn't make sense to me, right? Like, I had blonde hair, blue eyes. But my brother had dark hair. My father, he looks like he could be Indigenous, and it's just, but we didn't really think about it, right?
Yeah.
And the more we dug into it, the more my aunts and my father went through the family tree, the more we found, and it was really cool. And I've always thought of it as a beautiful gift, because the culture of the Indigenous people here in Newfoundland, Labrador, and all across Canada, and all across the United States, all across the world, is so beautiful. It's all very spiritual. It's very moving. A lot of the ceremonies that they do is very, very moving. And I'm so excited to be a part of it. So I just really dug in and tried to learn as much as I could, and really, try to make some changes in Newfoundland and Labrador, because there's a lot of people here like me. There's a lot of people in Newfoundland and Labrador who have blonde hair and blue eyes, and may or may not know that they have roots with the Indigenous culture here. And they may be scared to say so, because there's a lot of scrutiny when you look like me and you try to, celebrate your culture. And I've felt that scrutiny here in Newfoundland, Labrador, and throughout Canada. There's no two ways about it. But I feel like that's just lack of knowledge and understanding. So I've made it I don't know, this sounds like I'm trying to be something that I'm not, but I made it my kind of like my goal to, really grasp the culture, learn what I can, learn from the people that I can all across the province. I'm working with the Aboriginal Family Center in Goose Bay, Labrador. We've got an Orange Ribbon campaign that I've just started. I want to raise money for them. They're in a $500,000 deficit. And their buildings they do breakfast clubs for the kids out there, for the Indigenous kids, and they have family supports, and they have, the stuff that they do is unbelievable for the community. And I just want to celebrate that. I want to celebrate how beautiful the culture could be. And I also want to make sure that people are aware of the hardships that the Indigenous people throughout, Newfoundland, Labrador, and the world have gone through, and more particularly, recently the unbelievable news of the residential schools and the little bodies that have been found. And that's my goal, is to keep raising awareness.
Now, I don't want to make it again too controversial, but I feel like at the same point, it's like no one's here telling me Brian, don't even say that, because this is the benefit of having your own podcast. But it's like when you were mentioning, of course, again, I think you said blonde hair, blue eyes. How would I feel like it's a very kind of stereotypical thing to say, but it's when you think Indigenous, you think the certain type of music, the certain type of clothing, and it's kind of interesting to me. Like I guess it's kind of like a catch-22 depending on who you ask or their relationship with it. But when I see someone like yourself, like a Carrie Enerson, where you're like kind of looking at the person, you're like, not to be mean or outright being like dismissive, but you're like, you're indigenous, okay, like that's interesting. Like, and I feel like there's a part of you that's like, okay, you're getting rid of that stereotype in a sense. And like when you see someone like yourself in music, when you see like her in curling, and it just become more normalized, it's a little bit like it's the same, I guess. And I hope people don't take it the wrong way, but like when you see, I guess like a black CEO or a black person working in an office, like at one point that was like, oh my God, how can they do that? Like there was people out like, no, but now it's almost like if someone came to me today and like, this is your new boss and they're black, or whatever, you're like, all right, cool. But there was a point in time where people are like, how did this happen? It's like, who cares?
Yeah. No, I know. And it's a thing, like it's sad that we're still struggling with that here. Especially in Newfoundland and Labrador, because our culture is so diverse. And, the reason I have blonde hair and blue eyes is because, the European settlers came over and they, started families with the indigenous people that lived here on the land long before us. I think it's just like, I always want to be so careful with this, because the last thing I'd ever want to do is disrespect or upset anybody. But I think that the culture, canceled. Yeah, I don't want to do that. The culture is so beautiful, and it's so filled with traditions and whatnot, that it's a sacred thing. And I respect that so much. And I understand that how, they could, people could worry that someone like myself is, I don't even know what word to use here.
If you're like representing them or like,
but I think that it's a beautiful thing in a sense as well, because it really lets Canada, and especially Newfoundland and Labrador, know that there are lots of people like me, and I'm here only to do good. I find it such a privilege, and it's such an honor to be a part of the Indigenous culture. And I just want to learn. I don't know. I barely know anything that, about the culture. I'm learning the language. It's a very hard language, but it's also very beautiful, and I'm trying my best. And I just, I want to make sure at the end of the day, I want to be a role model for my niece and nephew. I want them to know what their culture includes. And I think it's a beautiful thing that we all need to work together in that sense. And unfortunately, sometimes there's a lot of roadblocks, but I'm more than willing to figure it out and, get rid of the roadblocks for sure. I'm like a sponge. Like, give me all the information that I need to know.
You're trying to learn it as well.
I'm trying so hard. And I just, it's almost like and I have been accepted for the most part, but it's just like this yearning for acceptance. And guys, let's work together. Like, let's make something really cool happen, and let people in Newfoundland and Labrador realize that they have the same culture as myself. Like, let's celebrate this, and let's find it out. But anyway, it's quite a journey, and I don't regret anything. And I've been really lucky. I've traveled to Winnipeg 3 times. I went to the Indigenous Music Awards, and I was nominated for 4 awards there, and it was probably some of the best memories of my life.
You get any yeses at that award?
I got all no's at those awards. I didn't get a yes. But I did have a lady come up to me she was an elder, and she looked at me, and we were in this it was a big powwow type thing. It was beautiful. And I was just watching, and I was like, honestly, I was like a kid on Christmas morning, just eyes wide open, doe-eyed, just looking at this amazing, like, there's so many colors and sparkles and so many sounds, and it was probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen. But this elder came up to me, and she was probably, I'm going to say 80s, mid to late 80s. And all she said to me was, "You don't belong here," and walked away from me. And I was gutted. I was so gutted. I was like, oh man, what does she mean? And I just remember I started to cry and just try to be like, oh, it's my allergies, like, I'm fine. But then it just turned into this like big sob session, and I could barely catch my breath. And a gentleman who had invited me to this event, he came up and he said, "My goodness, are you okay? Like, what's going on?" He gave me a hug, and I just cried and I cried and I cried. so dramatic again. I'm the most dramatic person you've ever talked to.
No,
and finally, when
I feel like that's a valid reason to get dramatic at that show.
I don't know. But anyway, I just, I was crying. And when I could finally compose myself, I said to him, this is what had happened. And this is what she had said to me. And I was like, for the first half hour I was here, I felt like I belonged. I felt so welcomed. And then it was like this, punch in the stomach where I was like, oh my God, not here too. Like, don't do this to me.
And that's it. Yeah. Like, I feel like it's on like both sides. And I'm going to change topics there, obviously. But like, as much as with anything, just not indigenous, with anything in life, it's almost like I'll use disability for the example. But it's like, if I'm going into a meeting full of disability and you feel wanted and valued, and you're like, I'm here because I want to learn more about you. And you're the ones that are coming out. Just say if it was people with disability coming out in the media going like, no one cares about us. No one's paying attention. You're like, well, I am. I'm actually here. But then you have someone in the room say, no, you don't belong here. Then it's almost like, well, what do you want me to do? I'm here to try to help. And you're basically telling me to get out. So it comes on two different sides.
Sure. In my situation, I understand it. I totally get it. I mean, you have... this is a very sacred event. This is a very I understand where she was coming from, and maybe, maybe she's had, I don't know. I can't speak for her, but I do understand where she's coming from.
Well, I look at it from the standpoint too. It's like almost like everyone can relate to that, where it's like maybe you're not the best basketball player or hockey player, and you win a championship, and you're in the room, and all it takes is that little like asshole or bully that was on the team that like, it's like, what did you contribute to the team? And it's like 1 minute you're at the all-time high because you're like, we just won. I guess this, like, say the Southern Shore Cup or the Calder Cup or whatever. And then all it takes is that comment to be like, way to go, way to drain me. You're right. I didn't do anything, but I felt a part of the team until you just made that comment to me. So I feel like it's relatable in any way.
Yeah. And again, I'll finish this whole thing with saying like my goal, especially here in Newfoundland and Labrador, there's crows all around my house. It's freaking me out. But there must be a nest nearby. This happens every night this time. Anyway, my goal being considered an Indigenous artist is just to bring awareness to Newfoundland and Labrador of the diversity of what Indigenous culture is here. And I just want to learn. And I want to learn from everybody and anybody that I can learn from. I want to go to Goose Bay, and I want to sit at the Aboriginal Family Center, and I want to learn from those kids and those families. I want to hear their stories, and then I want to tell them to everybody. That's my goal. And the same thing, all across Newfoundland. If I could, my goal last year was to, if the pandemic hadn't been in full force, I was going to travel across Newfoundland, Labrador, and stop into Con River and again in St. George's, and then go to Goose Bay and Sheshatshiu and Black Tickle, and just learn as much as I could and perform for everybody there. But of course, the world had other plans. But that's I'll hopefully be able to do that next year. I want to learn, and I want to just get the word out there to Newfoundland, Labrador that these people are, they're here. Indigenous people are just as important as anybody else. And I would say right now it's so important in our country, in our province to really shine such a positive light on those people. And we've got to start making a difference. We got to start, helping.
Yeah. To kind of close out the interview, I want to have a bit of a fun game called Around the World.
Sure.
Now, it's just basically a pun because on your last name, East. Because we did the same thing with Paige where we said turning the page. So I'm like, man, how can we be creative with this stuff? So what is the farthest place east that you've ever been?
Farthest place east? I don't know. I don't even know what's east. Where is east? I'm going to be honest with you. I have no idea. Like, you mean east in Newfoundland or like the world?
Like in the world, or even in Newfoundland, whichever one that you can think of.
I don't know. I haven't been to that many places, really. Well, I have. I don't know. My struggle is I'm really bad with geography, so I'm like, where's east? What's east?
That's fair. That's fair.
That's my answer. I don't know.
What's the farthest place west that you think that you performed in Newfoundland or Canada?
I would say Calgary for sure.
Calgary,
Yeah,
nice.
I haven't really done much performing outside of Canada. So that would be, for sure.
Okay. Where would be a place around the world that you would like to perform?
Oh my goodness. I would love to perform in Nashville. That's definitely up there. I'd love to perform at the Grand Ole Opry on that stage one day. I'd love to do what's the name of that theater in Toronto? I can't remember the name of it now. Anyway, there's a theater in Toronto I'd love to play at. And where else? I think that's it really. Grand Ole Opry would be or like, the Royal Albert in the UK. That'd be deadly. Yeah, they're definitely they're the top 3.
Now, if you could live anywhere else besides Newfoundland, I feel like I know where this answer is going. And if you guess the right one, I'm just going to put my hand up. But it's anywhere else around the world that you could live besides Newfoundland. Where would it be?
I don't think you're going to know this one. I would. You're probably thinking I'm going to say Nashville, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going for. Yeah.
No, I'd like to live. Honestly, I'm really small town girl. I would like to live in Prince Edward Island. I love Prince Edward Island.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Right in a little. Yeah, I'd like to live right on the river.
I was going to say if it was Newfoundland, you'd be like, I want to live in Brigus. I'd be like, I wouldn't have never guessed that.
That's where I'm from.
Where? Why?
Yeah, that's where I'm from.
Yeah. I want to live where I'm from. I would be like, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay,
it's like if someone asks me, where do you want to live? I'm like, there's a part of me that's like, I grew up in the Ghouls, so I like Ghouls, but it's like, I like Ottawa too, but I think I always wanted to be in Toronto. But living in Ottawa, I get it from the media standpoint, you want to be in Toronto, but there's a part of me that's like, why can't we make Ottawa a bit of a media hub? I like Ottawa. It's like a big, small city still. You get the big city.
I really like Ottawa.
But it's like a small city vibe where it's like Toronto is crazy with everything, where Ottawa's like, we're over here, man. If you just want to get away for a weekend, we're here. And I'm like, I'm okay with this.
I loved Ottawa. I'm sorry. I love Toronto. I lived there for, I think it was 8 months, but I also hated it. I loved it because it was so busy and beautiful and there were all these cool things to do, but I hated it because it was busy and big. You know what I mean? It was just, I would be the person to go to Tim Hortons and go, hi, can I get a large tea with 2 fresh milk? And they'd be like, what? What do you mean? Fresh milk? I'm like, yeah. Or call somebody love. No, that doesn't go over well in Toronto.
No, don't worry, dear. Don't worry, love. And someone from outside of Newfoundland be like, how many loves do your father have? I'm like, my mom, and that's it. But he's just being nice to that one on the phone. It's like, no, it's almost to the point where it's like, no wonder Newfoundlanders are always flirting, blah, blah, blah. It's like, we're not flirting. We're being nice.
Yeah, exactly.
You can imagine, I never experienced it up away, but I would love it if there was a much cooler, suaver version of me up away that you go and talk to every girl and they're like, this fellow over here is a flirt. Oh, tell me why he's a flirt. Then they explain it to a Newfoundlander, and it's like, man, you guys, you're just eating that up. He called you love, he called you darling, he called you dear. He was being nice. It's like, well, we think he's all hitting on us. It's like, no, he's not. He's over there playing hockey with his friends. He could care less now what you were doing.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Carolina East for coming on to the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying thank you for listening, and good night.